Hello, hello. Testing the audio real fast. Hello, hello. Testing the audio real fast. Hello. Hello. Welcome back. If you tuned in last week, we started on a new little alchemy style game based on our new AI API. I'll go over all that in a second, but just want to say welcome back. Thanks for joining me. The two big things recently with our studio is one, we released a new AI API, so all the internal technical stuff that we're doing for our own games, if you're a game developer, you can now sign up and use some of that in your own games as well. We started with a very generic do whatever you want endpoint on our API, but we're building out things for like NPC dialogue, generating NPCs, generating items, generating like news and events in your world, like lots of stuff that we're doing originally on like OpenAI or our own local models. We're basically improving them for our own stuff, so figured we might as well make it available to other people. If you want to check that out at all, you can head on over to chromagolem.com, click AI API at the top, or just api.chromagolem.com. Let me also say, last week the Elixir Emporium game that we were working on, we've had tons and tons of feedback on that, and people seem to like it. According to the stats, we've had like 6,000 different people play it, so it's nice to see, one, that people enjoy it, two, that the API is holding up, and three, that like all the feedback that we've gotten makes me think we could add a lot more to it without diluting the quality of the game. So figured we'd work on it a little bit again this week. It was just going to be a one-off thing, but sometimes when people like the games, you got to keep working on them. And I do want to, let me pop over to this screen. I did work on it off screen for a couple days last week. A little rusty on it now, so it might take a second to get back into it. But I do want to show off the state that it was at when we left the stream, because the next day I made it way, way prettier. So it's just such a juxtaposition I want to just show off. Here's a little snippet from the end of last stream,
so if we go over to
which is probably too quiet to hear. I'm realizing now
start,
because I turned down my audio boost. Hopefully it's a little better this week. Actually, let me turn it up just a little bit more. I'd rather be too loud.
And let's add a bunch of elements.
Alright, this should be hopefully a little bit better. But you can kind of see me from the past playing this very unstyled, very proof of concept, setting up some elements. Let's go back to like gameplay, generating text. We got a couple elements over here. We drag them in, we combine them. Very, very, very core gameplay. Very tight loop there, I guess. But you can drag stuff around, you can drag it to the NPC, everything works. But I did make it a whole lot prettier. Let's jump on in to this new version that's up on itch.io if anybody wants to play it. I guess I can put that link in the stream as well. That'll do. But we now have like a real game here. Sorry, I'm covering up the inventory list a little bit with my face, but we get random NPCs that show up. They've got things that they need from you. They've got weird problems. This guy, each night under the silver moon's gaze, his shadow detaches from his feet and roams the village, causing mischief and whispers of fear among his neighbors. Returns by dawn, leaving me to bear the weight of accusations and mistrust each morn. Can we make anything as an alchemist to solve this guy? So we've got our big ol' inventory list now. We start out with a bunch of stuff because that's way more fun than just starting out with a couple things. We also now have a shop you can go to. You got random items for sale. We also got some discounted items. The shop restocks every time you dismiss a visitor. So if you give him an item and then he leaves, you get new items in the shop. Or if you don't think you can help him, you can also dismiss him and get new items in the shop. We're gonna, let's see, what does he want? His shadow detaches, so maybe we do like, ooh, the chameleon skin would probably be good. We have a butterfly wing, which might be good with that. Let's sell some mud so we can afford chameleon skin. And let's combine that with like a butterfly wing. See what we get. A color changing cloak. It's closer to something that might stop his shadow from detaching. Maybe we can make some sort of like potion-y type thing. Very, very poisonous things. Deadly cocktail. Alright, that's probably not the road we want to go down. You know, let's give him an enchanted amulet. Let's see what he says. Sweet, he thinks it'll work. We got 3 coins. We got a bunch of new stuff that he tipped us with. We still need to make the UI a little clearer on like the new items that you get. They just appear at the end of your inventory versus like the coins appear and like go into your inventory. But that's kind of the gist. We can dismiss him. We get our shop restocked now. And somebody else shows up. We can keep crafting new things. We get gold from helping people, so you can, you know, have a little bit more variety in what you're picking to craft. What we will build this week is this recipe container. So every time you create an item, it stores, well, first of all, I guess I should say all of these items are generated by AI for the most part. And also, anytime you combine them, it'll check to see if we already have a recipe for that combination, and if not, it'll generate a new item and store that recipe. So if we were to combine iron and coal once, we don't have a recipe for it, but it creates steel, obviously. But now if we were to go buy more iron and coal, or produce it somehow, and we combine those again, we would always get steel. So you're kind of creating the recipes in this world as you go, but then once you've created them, they're static, and you can, we'll add in some more stuff that lets you get specific things that you want later. But for the most part, you are kind of just exploring the combinations in this world, which are different every time you play. So it's kind of fun. But I think what we will do, we've got shop working, but obviously this codex is not working. We want all of your items to appear here, and every time you click on one, we want to show both all the recipes that make that item and also all the recipes that that item is used in. So if you have salt, for example, you might want to know how to make salt, which is probably like, I don't know, stone and erosion or something. But you might also want to know all the recipes that you might want to put salt into. So, I mean, obviously there's a lot of recipes that if you mix salt with something, seashell and salt, you get sea salt. So if you have salt, you might want to see all the stuff that you can combine it with that you know the recipes for. But we're going to build that now. And then the other thing we'll probably do on stream is I want to kind of refactor how we're generating all these items. Right now, we are basically just generating strings for the item name. And what we'll want to do is pull that out and add a layer of abstraction to where we are generating item objects that have a name string but also have other properties. So we want to also add a cost to items, because right now they're random in the shop, but some items like wood and a 4-leaf clover and ice might be like 1 coin, but as you get more complex items like steel and elixir of wisdom, like maybe steel is 2 or 3 coins, elixir of wisdom is 5 coins. So I think that'll add more consistency in the items, and I think being that like prediction value, that logical prediction value, is very important with AI generated stuff. Like, you don't want to see a wood stick in the shop for 9 coins and you're like, oh, okay, this is all just random. You want to see a wood stick in the shop for 1 coin and be like, oh, that makes sense, yeah, and not get pulled out of the game kind of like that. And also, I think it'll be really cool. Right now, you sell items for 1 gold each, but if we store the cost on the item itself, you could, like if you have this guy you really want to help, but you don't have stuff, you could play more like a merchant play style where you go to the store and buy like, ooh, I bet gold and jelly, which I bought for 2 coins total. If I combine those, maybe gilded gelatin sells for 3 or 4 coins. So you can kind of explore more of the world that way. If you prefer like the merchanting aspect, you can go buy some items, craft something new, and sell it back and try and make more than you paid. But that's kind of the gist of where we're at. On this stream, we will build out this codex so you can browse all the recipes, and we will also probably go refactor how the items are generated. And I think we're good. The last thing I'll say before we get started, if you want to play this game, you can head on over to chromagolem.itch.io. We have a build up already. You can go ahead and just click Elixir Emporium. We've got some other games too that we built on previous weeks. Feel free to play those. But just click Run Game. Plays in your browser. It's free. It's fun. Tell me what you think. We got some instructions on how to play and so on. So you can leave comments down here. You can hit me up in the stream. We also have a Discord. If you want to join it, everyone's welcome. We got a Discord for game developers and game designers and gamers. So just head on down to this Discord link at the bottom of my stream. I'll see you there. All right, let's get coding. So I've set up a recipe database object, which is what we were using previously, but now we also have a recipe book panel. And when you load that up, we get our nice codex that we'll work on today. So all I've done really is just kind of mock out how things might look. We have a scroll rect over here, so we can make a list of items that you can scroll through and click on, and then we'll display something over here for that item. And I've gone ahead and create what will probably be the prefab for our items, so it should scroll. I always have problems with scroller rects, but as we add more and more to the list, should just populate and be scrollable just fine. We will go ahead and make that a prefab, and we will add a key codex key item display controller, and that'll handle our on click and maybe like a hover effect, something like that. Mostly we're just putting that there in place because we know we'll use it later. And let me just pull up my stream over here so I don't miss chat. Cool. So the pieces that we need to do really are, we need to populate this list. We probably can actually just add a button component on each item, and then we will have it pull like which item it displays for, or maybe we store the item on the display controller. We probably need some sort of recipe data object for making this nice to work with. And then we need some sort of panel over here for what we're actually displaying. So let's call this, I guess the panel is there. Let's add another panel for our container. And we will call that our recipe viewer panel. And I guess that should probably have a scroll rect in it too. Like, I'm trying to get better at doing responsive design and making sure that everything works when you scale stuff down or when your content's too long. And I think it's pretty easy to get to the point where maybe you have an item with 20 different recipes. So there's no bound on how many recipes it can be in. So obviously we need this to scroll some way. And I think maybe we can just, this is the scroll rect. You know what? Let's just let's copy this. We'll call that our recipe viewer panel. And it took me forever to set it up because I'm always struggling with scroll recs. But maybe we can just steal all the setup we did, copy it over, and just make sure everything fits properly. Cool. And then we'll have some sort of like recipe prefab or something. Okay. So how do we want that to look? If we were to click this guy, can we put him maybe at the top as like a header to show what is selected? We kind of have two distinct sections that we're building out. One is recipes that it appears in as an ingredient, and one is recipes for making it. So you know what? Let's just get this list populated first. Maybe that'll give us some UI components to work with. So let's go into our recipes book manager. Wonder if this will rename the file too. It does rename the file. That's nice. Okay then. It is not a singleton. Maybe this should live instead on the recipe database. Or maybe the recipe database should just have a reference to the panel. Let's do that. Public recipe book manager, recipe viewer panel. We'll set that, and then that's kind of by extension making this more of a more of a singleton in that we have singleton type access to it. But here, I'm slightly confused. Oh, it's just on the same object. Okay, yeah, that's fine. I was like, where did we even just do that? Didn't. So really we don't have to do that at all. We can just grab it from the start. So let's, it's fine. It doesn't matter. Still set, great. So this guy, public void populate known recipe keys. So this will take our, now why do we have a display here? It's surely pointing at this, which is, oh, okay, yeah, for just turning it off and on, I guess. Let's call that display panel. So we're also going to want a public game object item list key panel container. And so when we are populating that, we want to destroy all the children. And then we'll add our known recipes, which we will use a public game object prefab item list. We call it a recipe key display. And so we'll iterate over the known recipes and what's our script called on this? Codex key item display controller. These are pretty unhinged names, and we're gonna own them. So does this do anything? It does not. That is fine. We will leave that commented out because we will do something. We're going to set up the probably the data stored on it so we can pull that data when we click it from the button component. We have Dimitri making an appearance in the background. He's a good guy, although he steals Lucy's bed all the time. She loves that blanket, and it's his now. Alright, so let's take a look at our recipe key display. I'm going to also clear all but this. And then this guy. We probably want to build a data structure for an item because that's what we're going to use for serializing and deserializing to and from the LLM for generating items. Right now, items are just a single string, which we could set up and use as like use a string key into a dictionary of other strings. But I think since we're gonna need to re-architect it all for the item object anyway, we probably want to just kind of mock that out at least right now and use that, and then we'll go flesh out the actual functionality of it when we get back to well, using it with the AI. So we've got an item template, which we could also make a scriptable object, but I don't know that you can instantiate scriptable objects at runtime. Let's also fun fact, in our Discord, if you join it, we have Sage bots for each of the three major game engines. We got Unity, Godot, and Unreal, and you can ping them wherever you want with a question, and they'll answer you. They'll write code for you. They'll give you feedback on your code. If I say, can I instantiate new scriptable object instances at runtime? You actually probably can. There's probably just like a new, like a method you use instead of new object. But they'll just create a thread for you. You wait a few seconds, and hopefully you get an answer. We'll see. But thinking of, we probably don't need the item template to be a scriptable object because, well, we do have, in the game manager, we do hard code a lot of items to start the game out with. So maybe it is worth making a scriptable object and we'll have like a folder of items. I don't know if that's any better than just like hard coding it into code, other than it's a little nicer to do it in the editor. But it probably doesn't matter too much. Let's just double check that we can Unity create new scriptable object at runtime. Let's just see what people's issues have been. So you probably just need to do like scriptable object.new. Oh, this is actually just creating the actual object itself, not like an instance of it. So you can probably just create instances just fine. That's exactly what I want to see if there is an error. Still creating, that creates a reference to it. I see. So you could, it looks like the limitation is you can create the new items at runtime like we want to do, but you won't be able to persist them easily. So if, for example, we wanted to add save and load to this game instead of making it a one-time playthrough, you probably wouldn't be able to save like your recipes. I mean, that sounds wrong because surely that's a common problem, to save and persist scriptable objects. So it's probably fine. But I don't know that we need to do it, so let's not. Let's just create an item template base class, and we will do the exact same stuff that we're doing now, and it'll all be fine. So we want a public string name, and we will want descriptions, rarity, price. So let's add some of those in for now. Description. We'll probably, let's do a like public enum rarity, common, uncommon, sure. And then we'll want a worth or a value, I guess. And we probably don't need like a weight. There's like the flavor text that we could do as well, but I feel like let's get the description nailed down first. That might turn into flavor text. These will be just placeholders for the new item generation system with LLMs. But really all right now, we have string names for items. That's how we're representing items. And we want to replace that with this new item template, which I guess we could just call item. Cool. So this will probably actually be a pretty hefty refactor, but you know, we can try it. Let's go ahead and create a public item string name. And let's just say this name is equal to name. So that's what we'll use basically instead of all of our other just raw primitive string manipulations. Let's make this serializable so hopefully it can show up in the editor. So for example here, let's go take a look at how this works. If we say public list item now, and we just call it items for now, can we modify that in the inspector? No. But what if I system.serialize? That's not it. It's like field serializable, serialize field. Can we set name that way? No. What if we just have a public string blah? I was trying to be fancy with these getters and setters, but you know what? Why would you do that? Alright, so that'll do it. Now, we can create all our items here, which we will want to take off the game manager, I think, and move it over to the recipe database. So let's also put that on top, because this will get nice and chunky large. But that seems like it will work for our needs. Instead of this list of strings, we can just basically do the same thing here, but also give them some metadata, and this is what we'll be generating as well. Let's default their value to 1 though, just, and also I think it'll default to common anyway because it's a 0-based enum, but this is fine too. Okay, so we are going to shave the yak a little bit more instead of building this codex. Let's go ahead and move our items onto the recipe database. And let's say currently we have these, which can't be serialized. Known elements is kind of what we will be replacing, I think, because, well, we probably want the distinction of having both a list of all elements and also a list of elements that the player has seen. So we can start them out with just a couple, and we can still hard code in a bunch more. So let's start a little bit on like public list item, all items, and then we'd have public list item seen items. And that one, we can probably just make a hash set again. But if we check out the recipe database, now we can start creating items in here. Which, is this really better than like having a folder of scriptable object items that you have a directory set for here? I'm not sure. I guess you'd have to load them all at the beginning of the game. The really concerning thing with just doing it in the inspector is the chance of Unity being Unity and just like resetting this value, and you lose all of the hard work that you put into creating a ton of items up front. So maybe we do. Well, I think the real solution is probably loading it from a file versus a folder of scriptable objects, because loading it from a file is how we would do loading of a game later. We would just save all the recipes to that file, load from that file, and that doesn't make any distinction between the original like hard-coded in items and the items that the player has created. It's all just one pool versus having to handle it a little differently, loading those scriptable objects and then loading in the new stuff. So I haven't actually looked much at like some of the custom things you can create. I wonder if there's some sort of like a JSON resource or something that we can add and just use that. Probably not, but never even like looked through much of what do we have as options. So probably not. And I assume there's nothing resource-like here. Yeah. Alright, so what we will do is just have an item definitions class that we will use probably. But let's just double check once more and say like Unity resource database asset. See if we get anything. An asset database, that's not what we want. So the question is just how do we want to store all these items? We have a few options of what would work. We have a folder of scriptable objects. We have like bundling in a SQL database almost. We have a flat file that we can either read as JSON or as like a C# class that we can load in. We probably just want the JSON file, right? Can we... show an explorer. So what does Unity do if I open up a JSON file? Just dump me to a text editor? Yeah, that makes sense. But do we really want the JSON file as the starting point? We can create the, like, we could do it in the editor and have an export button that does create that file. Let's do that, I think, because the downside of, as we said, doing it in the editor is that Unity might be Unity and clear out the value or something. But if we have that export and import button, once we get to a point where we like it, we can export it to the file, bundle that file in, and that's what's get loaded in at the game start. That's fine. So if we look at our recipe database, we will do all items here. And why don't we go ahead and create a few? Let's steal our current item list from here. It's pretty long, actually. I mean, we're gonna have to basically rewrite it all anyway, no matter what we do. So let's go ahead and let's leave that in place, and we'll just create a few items just for testing. So we've got a stick. We've got a stone, a piece of coal, and a shark's tooth. And we probably want a lot more, but I do want to test to make sure that if we are in a spot where we have fewer items in the database than we're trying to grab for like the example, for the inventory, for example, we want to make sure it's not erroring now. So it's a nice time to do it. But let's see, where were we at? We want let's use our nice random known elements helper that we're using in a few places. And here is a great place to test if we grab from our new list of items rather than the hash set of strings that we were using. We want to grab these, grab the names off of it, and return those instead, and everything should still just work. So we are allowing duplicates in this, and the way we want to do this is, let's see. Elements to return. If we want requested item count, let's rename this. We started off calling everything elements, but let's go ahead and kind of do some more consistency on that naming. We'll start calling things items, since that's really the direction we're moving. Instead of combining like fire and water, we're combining more alchemical ingredients like mushrooms and spores. So let me just do that real fast. So if we are requesting, for example, 10 random items and we only have 4, we just want to return the ones that we know. So, but instead of known elements, we're going to be using all items. And I think we can use link here to just like map to the names. I don't remember the syntax for any of that though. Is select what I want? I think that's like a filter. I want... What's the other term for map? I forget. Reduce? No. It's map. Link. Let's see. Return child value is really what we're trying to do with it. Okay, so it's just selecting them and then probably looping over each and calling the value that we want. Right? I wish I could remember... What is map called? Mapping function, yeah. Transform. It's exactly what I want, because each of these objects I want to transform it into i.item name. Use the select. Oh. That is actually what I want. Huh. Alright. So if we do that, we can say select item name. And this is a list of items, but now we want to return a list of items, so that's gonna well, actually this returns a list of strings, right? I numeral string. Oh, we just cast it to list then. Okay. So this is the same logic. It just pulls from the list of objects and returns their names instead of just having an object or having just a list of names. So now if we do want to pull random amount, we can say elements return.add. I think that's actually, lists have element at 2. It's just called dot find at or element at, right. Or it's been a while. Fetch, what is it called in this language? Index of is a search. I mean, I can just square bracket it. I think there's a method for it, though. Yeah, square bracket. Okay, I mean, that's fine. I guess I just want to check to see if it's like outside of the bounds. I thought there'd be a helper method that like lets you pass in a default or something. Okay, that's fine. So here we just instead index it at all items dot count minus 1, and that's 1, 2. That guy, I believe. And when we have the one that we want to index, now we grab that and then close parentheses. So this should be the same logic. No big refactor yet. Let's play that and make sure that everything looks fine. And we will continue shaving this yak instead of doing what we meant to do. Cool, we've got all 4 items, which are fetched from the random items. Oh, right. Can't interact with the scene view. And then stone, piece of coal, graphite. If we combine some stuff, which should add more items, now we can give that to a guy. Random items should work again here. So he gave us the same 4 because we're not adding back to all items quite yet. Alright, that's fine. But I think what we want to do, I mean, 2 big things to do next. One, we want this to actually return items instead of the item name. So we'll need to make 3 changes there at least. But we also want to get rid of known elements and eventually known recipes, but known elements right now. If we comment that out, we'll be able to see how many places we need to modify, which is actually not that many. So here we can say well, we don't actually want this anymore, I think. So this is all hard-coded items the game starts with. And this is all items the player has seen. We don't necessarily want to just instantly add all of the items in the game to seen items. But we do want to add the items in the player's inventory to seen items. So what we'll do down here when we're adding it to our inventory, that's where we'll do this sort of scene item dot add. And this is kind of where we get a little fuzzy on should we really be storing these lists of objects like this that we're going to need to do weird comparisons on. It's just, can we say comparison operator just compares item name versus item name? Will that generate? Does that work? Why doesn't this work? Requires matching not equals to be defined. Cool, that's fine. Alright, so now hopefully we can just use these items and not have to like manipulate them every time we want to compare against another item. That's fine. They're just containers of data in the same way we were using a list of strings. We're effectively now using a list of strings when we compare pieces together, but they just have other metadata we can grab. Cool, so let's keep working through this initialization of the recipe database. We took out some logic, we're cleaning things up. We are starting the player off with some random items. We are adding those items specifically to items that the player has seen, and the seen items are just the pool of items that will show in their recipe book, but also the items that they can be tipped from the strangers that they help. They'll give them random items from that pool. They could also give them random items from the all items, I guess. But this should set us up with a random selection of items. We got rid of known elements, right? So if we say no new item, now we just want to either add it to all items or seen items, depending on what we're actually doing with it. So there, we want to see a new item because it exists. We're just adding it to the library. I think we're doing the same thing here. I guess this is a new item. So we want to break this into two functions and do slightly different things. Let's do C new item, and we'll say item. So scene items dot add item. Is that really singular? Yeah, scene items. And we'll say create new item, and that'll put it in the all items dot add. And let's pass that item through. Okay, so we should have two errors now. One is here. We're adding an item to the library, so now we just want this to see new item, which will add it to the player's list of scene items. I'm just going to add in a bunch of new items everywhere until we are using items everywhere. The only thing we want to add is we want to make sure if scene items dot contains the item, we don't need to add it because we are using a list now instead of a hash, which is there a reason to do that? Probably not. Hash set of item. So we can just add directly. But, well, I mean, all items should probably also be a hash set. The only downside of that is, don't think you can serialize that in the editor. Let's take a look. Yeah. Wait, why do we still have scene item? Oh, because it hasn't compiled in so long. Alright. So let's just say create new item and also no new item. See new item. Okay, so that should compile. We'll be able to see all items is still there because it's a list, which I think is fine. I'd rather have that than have to do it all in code. I mean, I'd rather have the trade-off of list versus the hash set. It's fine. So let's, since we've got the list here, let's say if this does not contain the item we're adding, we'll add it. And we should be good to go now. Recipe count label, still the same. What is this warning we are getting? Are we still getting it, or is it an old one? I think it's an old one. Oh, does not override object.equals. Sure. And then probably serialized hash code or something. What do you want now? Object.get hash code. Just lets us use item.equals. Okay, that's fine. Oh, hey, Tony Sprocket. I see you in the chat. I think I missed your chat a while back, but how's it going? Alrighty, so we're gonna keep slowly stripping out all the places that we are representing items as just strings. We're gonna start using more and more items instead of strings. So here, let's go ahead and return a list of items. Which now I guess we don't need to select. We just return the whole thing. This guy, we don't need to cast the item name. So let's take a look at the 3 places we use this. This is now a list of items. For each item, item, random item, item. We'll say item.item name here, but we'll come back to that in a sec. Add new item to inventory. And we have our item now, so we don't need the new item. Let's actually jump in here and pass in item as well. New item. Just add a new element, also needs an item. Everything just ripples through the whole game. So here we want item.item name, because we're just using that name on the label. We can jump on back. So this is all good. We've got our item we're passing around everywhere. This guy, a new item, just now takes an item and not the name. We see the item. That all looks great. We've got a couple more errors to work through. So when we restock the store, this is now giving a list of items. And I don't think that we need to cast that anymore. And a store listing. We should now have an item. Actually, we can probably do away with the store listing altogether because we have the name and the value in the item itself. The only thing is, for here, we're overriding the value to 1. Because it's on sale, obviously. I think we'll keep the store listing, but let's go ahead and say public store listing item. And we'll say item name is equal to item.item name. And also the gold cost is the value. And then what we can do is just set that gold cost manually here. New listing dot gold cost is equal to 1. And what we will do here is items for sale at I. We no longer have a price that we need because it's all set based on the item and not random, which is great. Here, we'll say discount the item to 1 gold. We could filter, like add some filters into random known items to only give items that are more than 1 gold normally, because it might be a little weird to have an item normally for 1 gold on sale for 1 gold, but for now that's probably fine. Let's continue on through the errors. What do we got next? This guy, add new item to inventory. So when we buy an item from the store, the store listing should have an item. We want to actually store the item itself on the store listing. So when we create the store listing from an item, we want to keep that reference to the item. Let's go back to where we were. So here, add a new item to inventory. Our store listing.item data is what gets added to the inventory. So that's the item object itself. This guy is the same sort of thing. We now have a list of items as rewards for each item. We just add that item. Perfect. Everything looks good here, except for our horrible mess of everything, but don't worry about that. We'll come back and clean up a lot of stuff. And then one more error, I think. Nope, that was all of it. So everything should hopefully work. Let's give it a quick play. Sorry, that is extremely loud. We did get an error up here. I would like to find that. Argument out of range. Here, right, because we are expecting 13 items. So let's just say if I is greater than or equal to items for sale.count, then that's all the items that go in the store. And likewise, we'll do the same if I is greater than or equal to items for sale.count, we do the same thing. And therefore, if you only have a couple items in the database, there's not going to be any sales. They're just on regular sale. But once you get more and more items, you'll start seeing discounts too. It's not going to be an issue because we're going to have enough items for it to not be an issue, like out of the gate. But it's an interesting syntax. Don't think it's clear though. Cool. So this should all be good. I'm gonna go ahead and take that volume slider down to like way lower to begin. What's our master volume set at? Oh, I guess it pulls it from the slider itself. So I want this guy to be at like 0.3, maybe even 0.2. It's such loud music, I think. Kind of just overwhelms everything. Cool. So we have delayed building the recipe book for so long. We have implemented items everywhere, I think. Let's take a look at the game manager. Make sure they're all implemented there and we're not still using strings anywhere, like here. If we were to... Ooh, I don't want to comment that out because that'll lose all this nice, delicious data that we've started with. But I do want to find out where all this is used. So let's just search this way. Oh, it's not even used anymore. Great. Cool. And we're not really messing with string items anymore. We've got item names. Create new item. Let's just do this. Just so it's the same item, but the comparison stuff we added is going to make it treated like the same anyway, so it doesn't really matter, just a little cleaner. In progress generation, all we need is the item names, I guess. We might want to come back to that because I think we'll want the value to also be a function of the ingredients values. But maybe we can just pass in those values to the LLM and it'll just work. Cool. Let's go ahead and start on our recipe book again. We've got this bad boy. We want to populate our list first. So I want to rename this to the recipe book panel manager, just to make it a little clear what's going on. Populate known recipe keys. So what we're doing in our known recipes, which is not what we want, I believe. We want seen items, but let's see. Okay, this is still used in at least a few places. Game manager updates our known recipes. Let's go ahead and say recipe database instance dot. Oh, I guess we already have see new item up here. So this should not be needed. This guy can go up here where he logically makes some sense. But we do actually need to store the recipe itself. So let's go create a class for that next to our item class, wherever we write in the model directory. Let's create a recipe class. And we want our ingredients to be a hash set because they're not ordered. And we want a single item as a result. Right? Are we missing anything? We don't really need like text explaining the recipe or like an enum on whether you mix it or craft it or merge it or whatever the action is. If we look down here, we're basically doing the same thing, just sticking it in a class. We were saying new recipe is a dictionary of this as keys to this as values. And I see that we're going to have a little bit of an issue in our two components in the panel because we can easily get all of the recipes where a item exists in the ingredients by just looping through. I guess we can, it's not too much different. It's fine. Cool. So we have a recipe object now. Let's go ahead and in our recipe database, let's add a method for public void see new or discover new recipe. And I kind of like, let's say discover new item here rather than see, and we'll rename this to discovered items. Cool, so here we can create a new all recipes the player has discovered, and that is a hash set of recipes, which is fine. We could do a list so it's ordered in the order that they discovered them in, and I mean, we're going to need to loop through it a ton anyway, which is a little bit rough with hash sets. So let's actually do that as a list of recipes. And we will just say discovered recipes.add recipe. And the only time we don't want to add a new recipe is if we already have a recipe with those exact same ingredients and that same outcome. but we should never get to a point where the same ingredients produce a different outcome. So I think it's just if discovered recipes dot any, if the ingredients on any existing recipe is the same as the ingredients on the new recipe, we don't want to add a new recipe. We'll just leave it in the list as we have it already. Only add new recipes if they are a different combination of ingredients. Same combination of ingredients should always produce the same item. Cool. Cool. Do we have any errors? We do not. So let's go back to populating the recipe list. And that is going to come from discovered recipes now, which is just a list of recipes now. And so I guess we'll show the, we might need to do some sort of grouping first, because you might have A plus B is equal to C, D plus E is equal to C, like two recipes that produce the same item. If our list is value-based and we're iterating over the list to populate our list effectively, we would have C twice. But if we go through and I guess the first time we see A, we would add it to the list, and then we would see B, we would add it to the list, and then we would see C, we would see D, obviously, all the way to E, and then we would see C again. So we want some sort of lookup for, have we already added this item to the list? So when we see C the second time, we should be like, oh, we already have that in the list. So we will go through the whole list and we'll look at both ingredients and output, but we'll just have a a dictionary of item to bool added item to codex list. And we probably don't actually even, I mean, the dictionary gives us O of 1 lookup, but we don't even need the bool because we can just check to see if the key is there. But that's fine. So if we say for each item in discovered items, if we've already added the item to the list, it contains the key, so we don't need to add it yet. Add item to codex list, and then here, yeah, is where we actually create the UI component. And that's all the same. And here, we will add a quick public void set data or something. We will use that. We will have a public test mesh pro of a label for item name label, and we'll have the same icon for everything. So just say item name label.text is equal to that. We can always add in icons to items later and pull them in that way. But that'll work for now, and then we can grab this guy and just say set item data for the item that we're showing. So this should populate the list properly, but we do want to toggle, actually, where is my, oh, there we go. Monitor's too big, couldn't find my cursor. Toggle recipe, I think is what we call it. Toggle recipe panel. So if we are showing it, we want to right. This is in the game manager. We want recipe database dot recipe panel or something. Recipe viewer panel. So now every time we toggle the codex on, it will refresh the list of ingredients. So that means we can leave the codex and be playing the game and it's not updating in the background. But then when we load it up, it should have stuff. So if we start with it on, obviously it's empty. But if we were to close it and reopen it, we get an error, obviously, because we didn't set any of our references at all. So this is on recipe panel manager. This guy, so our display panel is here. Item list key panel container is actually this guy. Our prefab is the recipe key display. Let's try that again. So let's close it, we toggle it on, we get another error. What are we missing? Ah, right. So on this guy, we also need that set. Third time's the charm. Here we go. We close it, we open it. Stick, stone, piece of coal, shark's tooth, Tony's sprocket. Perfect. And they're all buttons, so we can set up the events on them to load this panel. When you click on it, you can scroll it because it's a scroll view, but not enough to scroll. Let's just populate that real fast. It's the same item, so you can't really see it scrolling. Actually, it's not scrolling properly. Alright, we'll deal with that another time, because I hate scroll rects. It goes back to the original. I always have this problem, and I think the solution is preferred size on min, or on the vertical fit, but I think there's also something I need to add somewhere else. But we'll deal with that another time. It is populating the list with the actual items that we wanted to. So that's great. Okay, cool. So next up we want to populate this panel. When you click on an item, we want to show the recipes that the recipes that produce it and also the recipes that it's used in. So the way that we will do that, I think we want to let's head back and let's uncomment these known recipes things that we want to start with, because we want some recipes obviously to test with. So let's say known recipes.add. That is not what we want. We want discovered recipes, so we'll be removing this as well. So let's say discovered recipes.add And for that, say new recipe. Let's actually just create a nice little helper for that. Public recipe string ingredient 1 string ingredient string results. So now we have ingredients is equal to new hash set of item, and result is our new item. Cool. So now in here we can say air, fire, steam. I kind of liked the syntax of the two ingredients being enclosed like that, but I don't want to have a new hash set. It's nice to make it a little shorter. So now we will just do the same. Air and earth is wind, air and lava is stone, earth and water is mud, earth and fire is lava, etc., etc. Just pull all these in just to have some recipes that we can populate the list with. And then let's add air, earth, fire, and water to our initial items. Air. And we probably will take these out because we're moving away from the like element vibe, but they're easy to test with, so we'll get back to content once it's all working. Cool. So now we should have them in the codex list. We do, and then when we click on one, we'll get it over here. So let me go to the bathroom real fast. Quick little break, 1 minute, and then we will work on this panel. I will be right back. Alrighty, we're back. We are building out the recipe viewer panel now. So I think what we'll do is let's just like design it, and then we'll worry about dynamically populating it. But I think we don't really have an idea yet of how things should look. So let's make that not a problem. So we definitely want a header, which we will have as a key display. We can make it clickable, it doesn't matter, we'll just repopulate this, but let's call this fire. And then I want to take a look at our component library, see if we can pull anything in that makes some sense. So we want some sections. For example, recipes is a section that we probably want. We might also want some sort of like description box for some details about it. But let's grab this guy. Let's pull him back. We go into this recipe database panel, viewer panel. We throw that in here. Where are you at, my guy? Way over there. So this guy, we can start off by saying like recipes. To make this item. We probably actually want some sort of let's do a panel there as well. Recipes panel. We'll call it an item recipes panel. Let's get rid of the background image. Can we give it a height or not? Probably not. Let's do a content size fitter, see if that works. And then this guy will reset height. Cool, so now we can move this guy up. And we'll probably do like a vertical alignment, whatever the component was called on our content boy. But now we can also have a item used in panel, which we can bring down, and we can size properly. And let's call this used in. And so now thinking like how we want to visualize these recipes, we probably want like one item plus one item equals this item. And so this section would all have this item straight down the right hand side, and this section down here might have it as the first item in the list plus some other item equals whatever you get from there. So I think that'd be fine. Let's go ahead and grab our recipe key display and let's put it in this panel. Let's reset position and everything. So here I think we want like a recipe row type situation, but I don't want to abstract things too much. But if we take this guy and do like a smaller thing plus another thing equals our thing, would that look fine? I mean, it's kind of wonky to populate all that data. Do we want some sort of helper to build those rows? Probably. So let's say recipe row visualizer or row display. So this guy is about a row's length. You got this guy, and this guy. We say ingredient 1, ingredient 2, results. Now we do a horizontal layout group. Reset all these positions. Control width. Interesting. It's not how I would expect this to work. Why are you not expanding to the full height and width? That's better. We can work with that. These guys should probably expand more though. Force expand width on children. This guy, and this guy. There's plenty of room for more of ya. We probably actually do, let's just add text mesh pro plus and equals. We'll put this guy back here. Center, center. This guy over here. Center, center. So these guys definitely don't need their width expanded. So maybe we do all the widths ourselves. Can we modify these widths now? We can. Let's take this guy and this guy. Make them nice and tiny. This guy. Everything is getting real glonky. Because we can't get closer to the edge. Why is that? What in tarnation? Is there like padding set somewhere? Can I like hack the system? I could, but that's jank. Oh, I do want it like middle center. I just want these guys to expand more. So let's take these out. Let's expand these. I mean, I guess we can just probably expand them ourselves. Let's actually do them all together. But why is there so much padding between them and like on the edges? How did I mess this up so much? Horizontal layout group, no padding, no spacing. That's weird. Alright, it's going to be one of those things where we just come back for the detail styling later. We got these guys expanded enough. Let's bring these guys back. And then we will just modify things a little bit ourselves. But actually, there's just so much spacing between things. What happens if we just now why wouldn't that put that in the center? That one goes in the center, sure. Oh, it's because I'm setting pivot, not position. Okay. So what we can do then, if we set position and pivot, this guy, this guy, this guy, then we can kind of expand all three. We still need more space for the item name. And this is getting super stretched for some reason. Let's actually scale all those together. Never mind. So we want width of like 64. Maybe we get rid of the vial on these guys. And then we just expand the text fully. Minus some padding, of course. So we do like that. We center it. It's actually just, don't tell anyone. We're gonna unpack this, all these prefabs anyway. Guess we can now. Okay. We're getting closer. Right. These texts need their position reset. And then move down. Weird pivot, but okay. That'll be fine. Sure. That looks like a fine row. They're all a little bit low, actually. Okay, does that look fine for a recipe row? Maybe we can make them a little bit bigger, because I do know that but how do we make them all bigger equally? That'll be fine. Reset those positions. This guy's looking good. Filling out the space a lot better. I think we could even go a little bit bigger. We want to maximize the space that we're using just to make sure that all the item names fit. So let's just do it a tad bigger. Might even be too big, we'll see. I guess we can increase the row width. But that's looking good. Let's center this guy again. And this guy. We could go a little bit bigger, but I think this is fine. Most items should fit in those. And we'll auto size them all just in case. Max of like 40. Cool. So there's a recipe row that I think we'll also be able to reuse down here. It's just a matter of, does this item appear in the ingredients or in the result? So maybe instead of calling this recipes, let's say how to craft. Does that fit? Sure, that's fine. Let's make these guys a little smaller. Let's go about a unit over. And about a unit over. Okay, that's fine enough. We'll pixel perfect it all later. It's still like a inner indent, but I think that's fine because it gives some good like hierarchy to show that this section is within this label, and then our next section will as well. Cool. So we've got our recipe row display that we should now be able to create a few of them, and maybe we just stack those with a recipe rows container that all these guys will live in, and we can do a vertical layout group, but we'll actually put it in the right spot. And so that will be what ends up expanding the size of this content viewport and letting you scroll. So let's get that centered. We'll deal with the scrolling another time. I just want to get it all working. So this will be our container. We will use this as a prefab, and we will instantiate all of the recipes for this item both here, and let's go ahead and do the exact same thing down here. Recipe rows container. Just reset that position. And we probably want it pivoted at the top. Just move down a little bit. So same with this guy, pivot at the top, move it down. And I think that's what'll let us add more to it and be able to scroll properly. Cool, so let's go ahead and on our new row display, let's recipe row display setup. We'll add a little script that takes the items and populates the labels properly. So we want public void load data string, or let's do item ingredient 1, item ingredient 2, and item result. So we will have our public text mesh pro UGI ingredient 1 label. We've got that for the second ingredient, and we also want one for the results. So now we can say ingredient. Did I spell that right? Yeah, I did. One label dot text. Why are you complaining? Ingredient 1 label. Ingredient 1 label. Ingredient. I did not spell it correct. Cool. So ingredient 2 label. And our result label as well. Cool. So that should be enough. We'll just call that when we're populating this list. Let's go ahead and do that. So right now we're kind of populating this codex in the game manager when we are showing it, but I think we also want like more of a helper method of just like populate everything on the codex itself that we'll call here from the game manager instead of doing each of the pieces manually. So let's add that to the recipe book panel manager. Let's just say public void prepare to show to user, or like update contents or whatever we want to call it. We want to populate the known recipe keys, and we also want to populate whatever the first recipe keys recipe panel is. So let's say populate recipe details pane for item, and we'll call that selected item. So here we'll say if the first item, or if there is at least one item that we know about, I guess there always will be, we'll call populate details pane for that item, just so we don't have a blank pane here when the player first opens it. But I think, where are we storing these guys? Let's bring this up to the class level, and then once we populate the keys, we can pull the first, or just a random item, I guess. So let's take this guy, bring him up. And then we can say like item first item is equal to added item to codex list dot keys dot first or something. And then when we're populating all this, we can populate the details pane for that first item. Cool. So what we'll do when we populate that pane is basically we go through all of the ingredient recipes, and we're going to be creating instances of this prefab here, and we will fill it out with just the data. So Let's make sure everything is ready. Our ingredient 1 label is set, ingredient 2 label, and our result label. We'll apply all those changes. This guy, we did write the code to set those labels, cool. And so now we just want a public game object prefab a recipe row display. That's what we will create. Let's go ahead and set that before I forget. Wherever, oh yeah, somewhere else. Recipe row display. Throw that in there. And then as we populate the details pane for an item, we also want references both to the recipe rows container and let's say item used in container and crafting recipes container. So up here, no, on the actual row itself. No, that's not right. We did want it on the panel manager. So we want a public game object, crafting recipes container, and also a public game object item used in container. So that's what we will use to grab those references so we can instantiate the prefabs into it. So let's set those real fast, and then let's knock out the instantiation real fast and test it out. So crafting recipes container goes here. Item used in container goes here. Let's instantiate that row. So let's see. So crafting recipes. Find all recipes where this item is the result. I guess we do want to clear out any existing data from other panes. Data, let's do that, and the same for the other container. Item used in container, right? And so here we want to say, you know, actually, yeah, we can do a single loop through all the recipes and just say if the result is this item and if the ingredient contains this item. And we'll populate both container through the single pass. So for each recipe and all of our discovered recipes, if the result of that recipe is our selected item name, which actually we can just use our custom equality operator there, surely, recipe and item, recipe.results. So recipes that result in this item and recipes this item is used in. If the ingredients contains this item, cool. So now let's do the row. We've got our recipe row display, and we are putting it in the right container. So and on that, we want our hilariously named, what did we call it? Recipe row display setup. Not that funny, I guess. So this guy, for each of them, we want to set, what did we even call that method? Load data. Here. Load data, and we want to pass in, I think it's the 3, yeah. So here we have recipe.ingredients.first, recipe.ingredients.last, because we know it's always 2 items, I guess. And then we can say selected item. So that should populate all recipes where the recipe results in our current item. And then this one should do pretty much the same thing, I guess. We'll fix this in a second, but we can just say ingredients dot first. It's going to be the same, and we'll have recipe dot result. So to clean this up, let's say game object new recipe row is equal to null. Then we will set a row like this, which gives it the correct parent in each of them. And then we can just say if new recipe row is not equal to null, we'll use that logic to pull the actual recipe data off the recipe itself instead of dealing with this ingredient specifically. Cool, so this should work. I guess we can test it. Got no compilation errors, so that's nice. Surely it'll work on the first try. So we need to close that and reopen it for everything to load. So that first glance is not correct. I think that's exactly what we started with, so I don't think that we're calling this prepare to show to user. Yeah, we're not even calling this. Okay. So, right, that's where we wanted to, instead of starting to do all the components individually, we just want to trigger that all-encompassing method whenever we toggle that recipe panel on. So let's just hope it works this time. We'll close the panel itself. Actually, this is where we want to disable that. So we will start it up, load up the panel, and it should have all our recipes. It does not. We also haven't implemented clicking on these, I guess. But I wonder what item it's trying to show recipes for. Because we only added a few to begin with, so let's find out what item it's showing it has recipes for, and then let's make sure it has recipes. Whenever I touch the silks and linens to clean or fold them, they turn as heavy as lead, making my chores impossible. Reverse Rumpelstiltskin. So if we open this, showing recipes for stick. Yes, we have no recipes for stick. We probably do actually want to add some sort of null state if you try and open it and they don't have any recipes, like you've only seen the item itself. But let's add a recipe for stick. Let's say, let's see what the AI gives us even. So if we add stick and stick, we get wood, sure. If we add stick and mud, we get stick in the, no. Stick and I'm coming up blank on what you can make with sticks. Let's say stick and stone, you get slingshot. And then we also want to add one recipe that results in stick so we can test that out. So let's say like tree and storm results in a stick. What are we missing here? End parentheses. Cool, so now we should have recipes that the stick is used in and recipes that result in a stick. So when we open this up, check out our recipe panel. Cool, so we still need to populate that and probably highlight the item shown. But now when you click on an item, theoretically. We still gotta hook that up. But it'll show the recipes that result in that item. So if you're like, oh man, I really wanted a shark's tooth to give to this person who their wheat turns into feathers, unfortunately, then you can say, oh, shark's tooth, how do I make that? It's these items, or there might be other recipes to create it. You can head on over to the store, buy some items, try and craft some of these items yourself. So we're just adding more avenues to get to where you want to go. And I think that's been kind of the overarching theme of most of our AI stuff is like you want to give the player a well-defined goal. And maybe this is not the best example because it's so open-ended, but if you give them a goal and like explain the rules, you have a bunch of items, you can combine them, and then you can give that item to a person and they decide if they think that item would be helpful or not. Then you have that kind of system in place that the player can work within, and then they now can have a bunch of tools at their disposal of like crafting their own items, buying their own items. We'll add some other stuff. Hey, I see somebody in the chat. This is cool. I love seeing people actually make games with LLMs. Thanks for the follow. Yeah, we actually started this last week just as a demo. We've been doing a bunch of smaller games on LLMs and just kind of exploring different ways they can be used. We had a couple weeks ago, we did a horror game where you're locked in a cell with somebody locked next to you and you need to convince them that like you're a good guy just locked in the cell next to them. And then you eventually talk to the big bad guy, and it uses some of the details that you've given the first character in order to form a plot of why they locked you up. We also did, oh boy, what else did we do? We've done some more like negotiation type things where you need to negotiate the price of an item higher or lower. Let's see. We have some other demos at chromagolem.itch.io. The Word Wars demo doesn't have any AI in it, but You Are Not Alice is a really big one that we worked on for about a month and a half on stream. And in that you play as a hacker who took over somebody's computer at a big corporation. So you play that basically by jumping on their equivalent of Slack and convincing their coworkers like, hey, I got this file I need you to run in order for me to do my job. Can you run it real fast? And then it infects their computer, so then you have access to all their coworkers, and obviously all that chat and stuff is done with LLMs, but we also use LLMs under the hood to generate like their file systems and relationships. And in this game we're generating items, of course, but also like recipes for items. We're generating the NPCs and their problems. We also have some like logic-based LLM stuff under the hood. So when you give a person an item, it asks the LLM like, hey, this was their original problem. This is the item it was given. You should classify it in whether it'll be helpful or not, so we can give rewards accordingly. This was kind of a demo to prototype out that sort of dynamic quest system because we wanted to add achievements to You Are Not Alice. But it's really hard to create those sort of dynamic achievements of like, you have an NPC who really wants to be friends with somebody at work, so generating a quest for them might be going and convincing a coworker to hang out with them outside of work, which you can do over text if you jump on their computer and talk to their coworkers for them. Don't think too hard about all the logistics there. But it's also really hard to have those sorts of dynamic quests where you can do it in lots of different ways and then be able to test like, hey, is this quest completed? So this was kind of a test on generate a quest, have some sort of component that you can do it in different ways, and then pass it back to the LLM originally and say like, hey, does this action that the player did complete the quest? So this was a fail, we only got 1 coin. But if we get somebody else, maybe we can get something that actually helps. I am refactoring all the items, how they're generated right now, so we only have a few items in the game. So it's a lot more difficult. Normally you'd have a list of like 100 that you can choose from and go by. This guy, every direction he looks to turns to night, rendering his duties impossible as eternal darkness cloaks his sight. So we're not really going to give him a lot. Maybe we can give him like a torch. So maybe he can see better. So apparently that didn't work. One other thing we're going to add in this is if you give them an item that you do think will actually work for them and they don't think so, we'll add in a little more negotiation where you flip more into that kind of system we built in previous demos where you give them some sort of score, like how confident that they are the item will help, and then you can talk them through the solution and it'll increase the score or decrease the score. So maybe you can convince them that, oh no, it will help. But yeah, that's what we're doing right now. I'm glad you enjoy it. It's fun to work on, and I have had a lot of fun making it myself and playing it myself. So let's see, where were we? I don't even recall. We got recipes displaying. Let's add one more for stick and fire makes a torch, because I really liked that one. That made a lot of sense. That was actually AI generated, so it was nice that it worked on the spot. But in our panel, now we want to, in this guy, let's also set our header that wasn't set, and then we'll set up the button clicks as well for the options. So this guy, let's do a text mesh pro selected item name. We'll set that. We will set that reference properly here. So it was this guy. So that should populate this correctly. Eventually we will generate icons and images and stuff, but we're using our new Chromagolem API, which is just text-based right now. So, oh right, I don't show any API keys there. Panicked for a second. Just text-based for now, but we're going to add image generation soon, and then this will be a great game to demo that in as well. Let's see here. We still want to do scrolling, but I think I'll probably do that off screen because it's kind of just boring fiddling with the scroll rects. We want to set up the buttons. That's what we want to do. So we probably can't do it in the prefab because the prefab isn't going to have a reference to this method on the recipe book panel manager. But when we populate the keys, we can go ahead and say button. It is a button, right? Oh yeah, UI.button. And then we'll set the listener for that. That should work. And this handles clearing out all the existing details in the pane and loading in the new recipe. So that should work, actually. Let's test that. I didn't expect that to be that easy. We close that, we reopen it. If we click stone, okay, we have this text instead of this text, but it does seem to be working. If we click air, we see all the recipes the air is used in. We don't have a way to produce air yet. If you click stick, you can see the ways to produce sticks, but also what sticks are used in. Same with earth. Looks like it's working. We just need to fix this label. Put it up there instead. Cool. So that was surprisingly easy. And if we go now to create some new items, say we mix a stick with a piece of coal, I guess you get a pencil. If we load this up and click pencil, does not have a recipe, so we're probably not storing the recipe properly when we create stuff. So let's fix this first label real fast. This guy, selected item name, we actually want this label. Click, 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 click. Text. Cool. And so now let's also take a look at how we are storing those recipes. I think we didn't actually code that earlier. So if we go to the recipe database and discover a new item, discover new recipe 4 is not called. So this is what we're using to add the recipe to our recipe database. So in our element controller, where we're producing those recipes, we want to be storing it. So merge two ingredients add is the path we take. And that's only the path we take if we haven't already, if there wasn't a recipe already. So this will be for all new recipes. Recipe generation in progress sets it. We trigger the LLM. We set up a callback for when it produces the item contents. Cool. Mark it as a known element. We are working on changing all this nomenclature from elements to items slowly. We originally started out with a lot more like fire, water, earth type combinations, but I think we're moving more towards you playing as an alchemist. So you have like mushrooms and grass and flowers and little metal pieces and stuff and making items that way. So that's why a lot of things are labeled as element and not item. And yeah, we got rid of the bonus for combining stuff when we added the shop. We only had that in just so players would have a few more tools to play with. So here is the old way that we've been adding recipes. Now we want recipe database.instance.no or c discover new recipe, yeah. And we're creating a recipe of the ingredient, and the result. All right, that makes sense. So we should be able to get rid of known recipes by now. Let's go take a look at what we're still using it for. So if we comment this out, how many errors do we get? Just a couple. Discovered recipes is just the label of how many recipes that we know. And then here we're checking to see if a recipe already exists for these two ingredients. So we should probably implement that before it gets too late. So let's say find a recipe. This is in recipe database, so we actually already have discovered recipes. We have this distinction between all items and discovered items because we want to hard code in items that exist in the game. like stones and coal and pebbles and stuff without necessarily exposing them all in the recipe book. We have this discovered items that we populate the recipe book with, and this gets populated with only the items that players have seen or discovered. I think we probably want to do the same with recipes, so we can have like all these hard-coded recipes without just having a ton of recipes from the get-go in the recipe book. We only want to show them when the players discovered them. So I think instead of doing the task that we were setting out to do, let's add in all recipes hard-coded in the game. So let's have we can just do a hash set of recipes there, I think. It's still a little bit weird to query, but let's see how this feels. All recipes. So back in our result of mixing, wherever that was, here we want to find all recipes.select recipe where the ingredients contain the first ingredient and the second ingredient. What does default here do? I actually don't know. Probably maybe gives like a null or something. Oh, first throws an exception if there's nothing that it finds. But how do I test the default value is null? Okay, cool. That's exactly what we wanted. Maybe we don't need to cast that. So we look through all the recipes. We check to see if I guess we should be passing in items here, not the item names. Let's do that too. Might as well mix all the refactors. So now, ingredients contains recipe 1 and ingredient 2. Let's rename. Okay, so this recipe's ingredients, which should be a hash set of items, which has contains. Why is it trying to cast it to a recipe? Hash set recipe does not. Oh, you can't select on a hash set. I see. So we can just make that a list real quick. Right. But list surely has select. Am I just using this wrong? Oh, well, I guess I can just also, it does have a where. Ingredients contains ingredients 1 and ingredient 2. First order default is great. So now we can say, if we found a recipe, otherwise return null. And we don't want to return that. We want to return the recipe. So all this can go away. And let's try and clean up this super long line. Let's do that. Cool, so we look at all recipes, not just recipes the players discovered. Check to see if we can find one that has matching ingredients. If we do, we return that recipe, which we probably need to go modify how it's used because we just returned the recipe instead of a string now. I think it's expecting the resulting item, so we can just grab that out. If there isn't a recipe, we return null, and that's what causes some logic over here. If it's null, we generate a new recipe. So let's first say result from existing recipes is an item now. And we pass in items. So let's just create those inline real fast. And since we have those custom comparators, this should all just be fine. And then we want to get back the result of that recipe as an item. So here, oh, I renamed it. Where's that recipe? If we end up getting a null, then we'll go down this path in a second, but here we just want to set that we found a recipe and it has a result, so we combine the two components, set that result name in one of the components, destroy the other, and we're good to go. But if we don't have a recipe, let's go down this path real fast and make sure that we are creating the recipe just fine, and then also storing that recipe, discover new recipe. So that's where we set up. We hide the two components, set up a trigger for the LLM to start generating what the response would be when we get the response from a callback. That's where we are creating a new item, discovering it, which adds it to the player's codex, and then discovering the recipe as well. Cool. Now let's look at this discover recipe, because we did just branch out all recipes and discovered recipes. These should all be all recipes. And we want to use discovered recipes, which is what we were doing for here, and also in our panel should use discovered recipes here. Okay, cool. So everything should work now. Let's make sure we don't have any errors. I did move fast and hypothetically break things. But now when we open up our recipe panel, we shouldn't have any recipes from the get-go. And we don't, which is great. But if we come out here and combine a piece of coal with a stick to get a torch or an error. Oh, right. We didn't have... Okay. So let's fix this real fast. We're getting back a recipe. Let's actually split this out a little bit more. Existing recipe is equal to this bad boy. And then we want to check to see if existing recipe is null. Otherwise, we grab the actual item off of it, because we can return a null, but we were chaining on .result at the end, which is probably actually what the error was. I didn't actually read it that much, but maybe we'll get the same error again now. But here, if there is no recipe, that's when we go in and do all the changes that we just made. Let's try that once more. So now stick and piece of coal is a torch, which is a recipe that I think we already had. It's a little odd that it combined, so we want to make sure that the existing recipes checker is looking at all recipes and not discovered recipes. So that's going to be trace through. So here, result of mixing is looking at all recipes. And we combined a stick and coal, I think it was. Oh, stick and fire is what we added in. That's great. All right, so now we should have torch here. Piece of coal, stick makes it torch. Cool. And so also piece of coal now has a recipe here, and stick has a recipe here as well. And you'll be able to scroll these as well. Cool. So that seems like it's working. If we start making a bunch of random components, maybe we buy some more stuff. Combine the double Tony's sprocket. Oh, hey, Cozy Biscuit. Thanks for tuning in. Glad you like the music. It's such a good vibe. It's like 30 minutes of songs. But since I'm only playing over and over again, you only get to the first song, but every single one is a bop. The songs are not actually generated. We just have a free asset on the asset store for some medieval music, but I love them. So I want to just combine a few more things. Let's test out our recipe book a little bit more. Earth and dust makes desert. Sure. Desert and steam. Sure. So now we have a lot more items. We still need to fix the scrolling, but now with, for example, fire, you can see we're starting to get more recipes on each item for what we can do. And I guess we could set these up to where if you see like this, you could be able to click on Dragon's Breath and switch to that. Why don't we do that too? That's probably a nice little quality of health, quality of life. So in our recipe book manager, when we're setting up this guy, we can, how do we want to do this? Recipe row display has buttons. We can just button. So here we can set up on clicks for each of the buttons. And how do we want to reference back? We have the recipe database, which gives us access to the recipe viewer panel, which lets us say display, not display panel. What's our function called? Populate recipe details pane for. And this gives us ingredient 1.item name, or actually we just pass in the item itself. So ingredient 1, great. Ingredient 2, do the same. Result button, do the same. Cool. So now all the buttons in the recipe viewer should work. Probably. One way to find out. So we make some recipes, Tony's sprocket and some water, stick and rust, air and earth, diamond and termites, industrial drill bit, fire and wind, wildfire. Oh, right, we didn't set those buttons. So recipe row, ingredient 1, Ingredient 2, result button. Let's try that once more. Stone and Tony's sprocket makes a grindstone. That makes sense. Let's grind a stick. We get a sharpened stick. We put a piece of coal on the sharpened stick. We get a spear with a charcoal tip. Let's light it on fire. A flaming spear with a shark's tooth. Dragon fang weapon. Perfect. So now we have all these. If we click on piece of coal, it takes us to the piece of coal page. Cool. So you can click around. That seems a lot nicer, I think. If you're like, oh, I want to make a grindstone, you see, okay, to make a grindstone I need Tony's sprocket and stone. How do I make stone? I don't know, but if there were more recipes that you've discovered, you might know. Let's give this guy, what does he want? He's burdened with a dilemma most strange and troubling. Each night as the moon takes its place in the heavens, my baked goods come to life, cavorting in my kitchen and wreaking havoc. You should use this dragon fang weapon to fight them. It's probably not what you want, but it's what we can do with the items we have right now. Cool, so looks like we used all those discovered items as a pool of items that we can be tipped with, even though we didn't really do a great job. When we dismiss him, we should get the shop restocked. So we've got a lot more items here, and we're starting to see those items appear in the shop as well. We never did add value to these items, so they are just 1 coin right now. We could still do that. But I think we can call this, well, I guess we need to fix the scrolling. But other than that, the recipe panel is looking pretty good. I might add, if there's nothing in a section, maybe we either don't show it as an option, or maybe we just say, like, you haven't discovered any recipes or something. I think let's do that instead. So let's go over to our nice handy dandy component library and find something pretty. Like maybe this guy. We'll take him back. We'll make a prefab out of him. So in this panel, we can have a null state. And we will just make this guy a lot smaller. How does that look? That looks fine. Could be better, but could be worse. Cool. So what we will do is copy that and put it in the other recipe section as well, which very confused how I structured this now. Is this all wrong? Item list. This is our pane. In the pane we have our header. Oh, I didn't see this guy down here. That makes so much more sense. Cool. So we have this guy as well. And then we will disable both of those. Let's say how to craft null state and item used in null state, and we will set the references to that, and then when we are populating our recipe panel here, if we don't have any recipes, then we will show those. And so here we can say bool has recipes, bool has used in. If we find a recipe that results in this, we can set has recipes to true. Doesn't matter if we keep resetting it to true over and over, it's still going to have the same effect. And here we'll say has used in is true. So now after the loop, we can show the null states if there's no no data. That is interesting way to do it, but that should work actually. That actually works better because it's toggling it back off if there is data. Huh. Cool. So we just need to go set those references now. How to craft null state and item used in null state. So now, if we play it, we should start seeing those. Haven't discovered any recipes for any of them, but if we do create some recipes, mechanical heart's pretty cool. We now have data. Nice. Tony's sprocket and a piece of coal. Interesting. Set it on fire. Steam engine. Okay, okay. A steam locomotive. I am noticing that this recipe count is not always updating. Or maybe it is. A steam-powered javelin launcher. That's what you need, right? Whenever I swing my axe, it turns into a bouquet of flowers the moment before it should carry out the law's grim sentence. Oh, are you an executioner? Okay. So your axe turns into flowers. It is bewilderingly beautiful, but undermines the solemnity of my role and has led to an uproar of confusion and mockery amongst the townsfolk. Yeah, why don't you try this steam-powered javelin launcher? I feel like that should work, but sure. But things are looking good. Let's fix this scrolling issue if we can, and then we can call the codex done too. So I am so bad at these rect transforms. I always feels like they never work. But if we go to this key panel here, we open the viewport, which is sized correctly. That's how much you should see. We look at the content, which should probably have a content size fitter, I would imagine. the preferred size vertical fit. And then here we start having our container, which has the content size fitter on it. We have objects within it, which increase this size, but not necessarily this size, interestingly. But I did just add that content size fitter. Let's see if this scrolls as expected. It does not. Okay. So why? Is it because the content's height is 0? Min size. Preferred size. So the viewport sized correctly. What if this guy expands? No? Welcome to the wacky world of Unity, where you just play with buttons until something works, instead of figuring out how it works. So these are adding to the list correctly. The list itself is not gaining any height. Preferred size. That seems more correct. But why are you not... Oh, you do have height. Okay. Does the content have height? Content does not have height. So we could use this. I mean, is it because we doubled up on the layers here? How do we do it in our workbench? No, our element list panel. So we have the scroll rect, which is this guy. This guy, I mean. Those settings should be very similar. We will upgrade that scroll sensitivity to be the same though. Oh, we shouldn't do that in let's not be playing so we can actually make changes and they will persist. So let's update this scroll rect. That looks the same as this guy, right? Yeah, those are the same. Alright, we go down to the viewport. It's gonna be the same. But yeah, they both have the same size, which looks correct. We look at the content, which has a content size fitter on her, and the vertical layout group. Here we have the layout group is a layer down. Let's just merge this back up. Let's say codex key item list. Let's put our vertical layout group there. All these guys go onto that guy. And these guys, if we reset the position, do they go back to where they should be? Yeah, I guess so. Kind of. We do want to reset this guy. So our list is now that object. And then upper center looks good. If we start adding more of these guys, there's a bunch of space between them, but we are getting a scroll bar now. So if we play this, hopefully it should scroll correctly. It does. Cool. So now we just need to figure out the spacing between them, which is actually the problem we had a little while ago too. There's no spacing on this guy. So we could technically like hack it, but I want to know why this is happening. Why are these guys counted so much taller than they are. That looks more like 60 pixels than 120. But nothing inside. Let's scale it. Why? Why do you all scale that way? Huh. Well, I mean, the scrolling works, I guess. And until I know why this is doing this, maybe we just give it some negative spacing and make things look good. 45 maybe, or 55 even. 55 looks good. Okay, so that should give us all our recipes and be scrollable. These guys we want to be scrollable as well. Recipe viewer panel. We definitely don't want, well, actually, I was going to make each individual section scrollable, but maybe we want to scroll this whole panel. I think that makes a lot more sense. So what we'll do is, in our content, we're going to have that be a vertical layout group that just stacks this on top of this section on top of this section. And then in these sections, we'll have the content size fitters that expand the height based on how many recipes there are, I think. So let's center this. Weird borders. Let's add our vertical layout group, which messes everything up, obviously. Let's do upper center. This guy looks great. Couldn't be better. Literally the best thing I've ever seen. But this guy, why are you so far away? Why does this guy have so much margin underneath him? Like if I delete that, these guys go all the way up to the top. It's something to do with this weird UI component, I feel. I mean, I could just have a different header. I feel like whatever is causing this margin is exactly what caused the margin in the sidebar too. But I mean, I guess this is fine for making sure it scrolls for now. But yeah, positions set very weirdly. Height. There's no like margin or padding or anything. Okay. Vertical layout group, -40. But that's not quite right because whoops. You know, maybe we could even, let's have like, item details panel. And we can make that the size we want. Let's put this guy inside that. Reset his position. And then this guy, Come on, my guy. Why are you not stretching? Yeah, it's a weird component, I think. Maybe I should redo that. But that seems fine. So now our panel is at the top. We can add a little bit of top spacing. Let's do like, we're just matching it to this left-hand side. I think we had 30 padding over there. So now this guy and this guy. This guy has no... Let's remove this. And put the content size fitter on this guy if we can. Vertical fit, preferred size. I don't think we can... Yeah, the parent here is controlling the height. Which I don't think we need, yeah. I mean, if everything works, we don't need it to do that. But since it has a height of 0, oh, we can set the height now. Okay, vertical fit of preferred size. Oh, right, we can't set the height then. But let's see if we can get things working as we would like them to. You can hear Lucy snoring, yeah. She loves that blanket. Dimitri stole it from her for a minute, and he's now on the poof. So she got her bed back. Glad she's making an appearance for someone. So we need this panel. It doesn't want us to have a content size fitter as a child to this, but we're not controlling the height with the vertical layout group, so it should be fine. Spacing of, let's say 30. Let's do 50, why not? So this is looking better. We got our item details panel, which we can add like the description and value and stuff like that whenever we generate more of the item. We've got our recipes panel that I think if we start adding more of these, well, we got to get this to have a vertical layout group too, I think. And then we'll add some spacing between those. And then if we go to this guy and bring him back, now he can have a vertical layout group as well. We have some spacing of the same amount. We did 20. We make sure everything looks good. And if we were to add that guy in, I guess the container would be empty, so it would scoot up. That would be fine. We want to make sure that we're redrawing the canvas anytime we're changing stuff so that doesn't happen. But if we go in and add more recipes here, we can't tell if there's scroll bar there appearing or not, but this content viewport is correct, but the content might also need a content size fitter. Not actually sure. this guy plus this guy plus this guy. It's weird they have no width, but it's probably fine. Let's take a look. Does this scroll? I don't know. So it does scroll, but it's not correct. 'Cause our content isn't being resized properly. But it is looking a lot better. You can click on stuff. I mean, obviously this is all uninitialized. You gotta load it back up. We're getting better. Cool. So why is our content always this big when the things inside of it are bigger? This is our box. This is how tall it says it is. But this guy plus this guy plus this guy. Is it because we have spacing? That does decrease. Okay, so that's not it because it did change the size. I mean, this is about the missing size. What if we add a content size fitter here? Preferred size. So now our content is smaller. Okay. Sure. Preferred size. Preferred size. This guy's got a vertical layout group, so that might be the issue. But I feel like we need that. Yeah, that doesn't fix it. So let's bring that back in. Let's add more spacing, I think. No, I liked 50 actually. It's always the scroll Rex at the end. Why is it not correct? Oh, we do have a scroll bar here. I don't know why, but I don't know what I changed, but maybe it scrolls now. Does it scroll? It does. We did it, boys. Everything works. I knew what we were doing. Cool. So let's not touch a thing. Let's go up to our content, add our padding that doesn't exist. More padding, sure. Let's make this guy a little bigger, so it's more of a header for now. I cannot change the height. You know, it works. It works just fine. We don't need to tweak it. Let's double check that our null states also look good. But still scrolls correctly. If we close it, open it, which is what reinitializes it, we get nice null states on both of them. If we go and combine a stick with a piece of coal, get a torch, we've got a stick. And click stick, we can click torch. That's a little weird. It's not quite right. Piece of coal. Why does it look good sometimes and not other times? Like, this is how to craft. This is a sticks page. If we load the stick page, the exact same page, it looks different. We are going to manually recalculate the canvas. That's not right. Redraw the canvas. That's it. Let's give that a try. Alright. Stone and a stick. We got a slingshot. Slingshot and a piece of coal. Projectile fuel. Perfect. Very confused, but I mean, it doesn't look as bad as it did. I just don't understand why drawing the exact same page over and over again results in either this section being slightly larger or this section having less padding before it. But, you know, it just looks a little janky when the headers are off centered, but at least there's no text overlapping anymore. So maybe I'll spend like maybe 5 more minutes seeing if I can figure out why this is happening, but other than that, it's probably good enough. It does the job. If you want to see how to make projectile fuel, you can click on it. You can see you need a piece of coal and a slingshot. Oh, I don't know how to make a slingshot. You click on slingshot. How did we craft a slingshot? That's... I think there's a bug there. Because... how did we craft a slingshot? I think... a stick and a stone? Is that right? Yeah, and I think that that is an existing recipe. Right? Slingshot. Yes. So, when we combine items here, and we find an existing recipe, we also need to discover that recipe as the player. Because if we don't discover it, it doesn't show up in our book. So, we do have a recipe here. We can go ahead and say, let's see, how do we do it? This place, here, discover new recipe. Let's just steal that actually. So, there's no harm in repeatedly discovering the same recipe, so just always discover. And our components are these guys. And our output is result from existing recipe dot item name. Actually just the item, right? Does this take, oh, this takes a recipe. New recipe, new item, new item. And is this a string? It's an item. Right, our recipe helper is like this. Just takes the strings, which is a little nicer, I think. This guy is an item, so we want the item name. Cool. So now when we discover recipes that exist in the game but we just haven't seen yet, they should also get added to our recipe book. Let's double check that. And we'll double check slingshot is stick and stone. Oh, what have I done? Alright, so stick and stone have no recipes. We don't have slingshot here. We combine stick and stone. We get slingshot instantly because the recipe exists. Now stick still has no recipes. Stone has a recipe. Okay. And we don't have slingshot as an option either. So I'm guessing what's happening is... Either we're creating the recipe for just the first ingredient. I don't think that that is the case. Hold on, let me just either we're storing the recipe wrong, or we are the logic is wrong when we're iterating over the list of discovered recipes to pull out what we want. So that is here, I believe. So stick and stone, we saw the recipe when you clicked on stick, but not when you clicked on stone. So here, going over all the discovered recipes, this is not the case we want to deal with. We want to look at if the ingredients contains the selected item. Then we create a row. So let's say ingredient 1. We can do it all in one line, I guess. And then we'll say debug.log recipe for recipe.result item name. Sure. So now let's just trace through a little bit, figure out what's going wrong here. So a stick and a stone, slingshot. We now have one discovered recipe, which is correct because it's a stick and a stone. A stone and a stick is the same recipe. So here, it is the same recipe, so we need to add it well... So wait, it shows up for stone, but not stick. So if we click stick, ingredient 1 is stone, ingredient 2 is slingshot. That's not right. Oh, we're probably, I mean, I generated this. Ingredients.last. So yeah, I guess we're storing it wrong. So where do we store it? No new recipe, I think. Discover new recipe. Where are we using that? Got result, not this one. This does do ingredient 1, ingredient 2 result, which is the correct thing. If we go here, I bet... Yeah. We're just big dummies, because we set that right here to the new name. Gotta make the recipe first, using the old name. Then we can update the actual node on screen. Cool. So let's see a stick and a stone now. Stick, stone, slingshot, stick, stone plus stick equals slingshot, stone, stone plus stick equals slingshot. I don't know why these every time. Probably something to do with how I'm doing all those content fitters. Like, I probably don't need all those. Oh, interesting. You can drag stuff in while this panel is open. I should probably... Let's... I mean, I'm kind of wrapping up, but let's fix that as well while we're here. So... Recipe book panel, let's close that so it starts out and it needs to be initialized when you load it up the first time. We can get rid of all those debugs we just added for debugging. In our node manager, or element node controller, here we want bool codex is open, and I think we can just how best do we want to do this? We basically want to make all drags invalid if the codex is open. Probably should go here, but I'm curious why we're not adjusting the position as well. But I think, I mean, we're kind of doing the position here. Let's go ahead and just... Okay. I feel like we should get rid of this because it's kind of code smelly that we can reset a position and not necessarily also reset the transform's parent. But it's probably fine. Because it's really like, it's handling the case of this and this and this just in one line. But let's just reset the parent transform as well to be safe. Now we can also say You know, maybe we should just block dragging at all. Like starting drag if the codex is open. Let's do that. So when your codex is open, you won't be able to drag anything at all. And so we don't need to handle it on end drag. Seems fine. We'll double check that that works. Stick and a shark's tooth gives us a spear. I'm pretty good. Now, can we also buy another stick and do a stick and a stone to also get a spear? Right, slingshot. Let's dismiss him, get another stick if we can. Stick and a piece of coal. Right, that's obviously a torch. I just wanted to see if we could get 2 recipes for the same item, which we will be able to do when we get more items in, but just can't preview it right now, I guess. But it's kind of nice if you have a stick and you're like, what can I make with this? You can be like, oh, okay, if I had any of these, I can make those things. How do I get a click around, you know. I would say this codex works now, and as you play more, it'll fill itself out, which I think will be cool. And we really just need to add all those items back into the game, which we took out when we refactored all the items earlier. So why don't we have a nice chill little cleaning things up session, and then I'll probably call the stream. I'll do my outro then, don't worry. Alright, so recipe database. Let's get some items in. I think it's gonna be pretty annoying to populate this all from the inspector. So I think what we want to do is add a method here that we can use as a context menu method. Public void add all items, add items list from code. And I think we can do context menu. Cool. So now we can just say like all items is a new list to clear it out, and then all items dot add. Wonder if we can add like implicit casting from a string to items. So we could do this, and it would create the item in the backend instead of having to do new item over and over. I feel like that would be implicit casting from string to item. Can we do that? I guess so. We can do whatever we want. We're coders. Alright, let's add all these items. So, kept them all stored on the game manager for the things that we were playing with, and people seem to like them. So I'm just going to go down this list, typing nice and slow. Maybe I'll throw on some of that jam music in the background, and we can just fill out some items, call it good. And if you are watching and alive and you want to see some more items, just you want to see like what they might combine into, or just think they'd be fun items, feel free to throw them in the chat and I'll throw them in as well while I type these all out. Before I type all these out, I should double check that this actually works. If we go to our recipe database, all items here, we want to add items list from code. Okay, it does work. Cool. I think it's a lot nicer to just build these items from the code and then populate the inspector versus the other way around. We do get a bunch of funky errors, probably from our implicit casting. Or maybe it's fine. Alright, it's fine. We were at potato, of course. Other elements you might think that an alchemist might have in their inventory, or like little components that might make interesting potions or trinkets or something, is what I'm looking for. You know what, I'll just... Oh, interesting. Maybe our background music doesn't work for cueing the next song. Huh. We can look at that next. Let's get these items back in though. We're almost there. This is also still probably not the way to do it. But, it gets us a bunch of hard-coded stuff that we can play with at the beginning. Let's do this, actually. Okay, that was too clever. Salt. Vinegar. I feel like as a developer, it's mildly embarrassing to be retyping all of these by hand, but it's kind of nice to get them all fresh in my head, all the items that we've added, so I've got more context of what we've added and what we might want as well. So it's a kind of nice little refresher. And now that it's in code, it's a lot easier to like reorder all the lines alphabetically or group them into categories and other stuff as well. So this will be, I would say, nicer long term. So we already have stick, or maybe we don't. Wooden stick is great. Let's just call it stick though. Snail shell, and once more let's do a mirror. Cool, so can I use multiple cursors? If I just do that, and then perfect. Alright, so that should add all the items that we want to start with. Let's just head on over to our recipe database, add them all. We have 74 items to start with. That sounds great. We'll add a bunch more. I also want to ask like the Discord for a bunch of items, and I'm so glad that I just added all this in code instead of in the inspector, because we were playing, and when we quit playing it resets everything. So we're back to 9 items, but I can add them again. So now they're actually saved. But I'll get a bunch of suggestions from people on items. I think that'll be really fun, and I think the items themselves, like the actual content of the game, is very easy to dictate from the quality of the items you start with. So a bunch of weird items is going to produce a pretty weird game, but if we think through the items that we start with, I think it'll be a really cool foundation to build on. Cool. Let's look at what's going on with our music. So play next song. Object reference not set to an instance of an object. So we've got our music manager. Audio clip is not set, but song queue. We do set it, and we pass in these songs. This is background music manager. These are our songs. So they should all pass in to this queue. Play next song. Queue should be greater than 0. They are audio clips. We should queue it on. Re-add it to the end of the queue, set the clip, and play. Is audio source correct? It's going to be this. And we know play the next song works because that's how we play our first song. So wait, is it here? Audio source is playing. Will be false when the song is done, which will make this true. We queue up another song. Let's say playing next song. Song queue length is this, and we want to print that first in case the peak throws an exception if it's a length of 0. Cool. Well, let's, I guess, listen to a whole song. I gotta go to the bathroom anyway. Drink a lot of water on stream. Stay hydrated. So, keep this music playing. We will resume in just a second. Be right back.
So I realized I could have just played a shorter audio clip instead of playing through the whole song. But let's double check. We should have gotten... Okay, 8 songs are queued up. Playing Medieval Volume 2-1. Cool. That song is 3 minutes long. Wish I could see... Well, I guess if we just stop it playing, for example, set it to a really short sound, is it gonna play and be done? Oh, it played the second one. Hey, oh, well. Played the second one, but I also see the first one is still at the beginning. Oh wait, this is just the song list, not the actual queue. But if we set this to a really short song... Oh, we'd have to like press play again in order to play the new clip. Well, I think it's... I mean, we aired before, but I'm unsure why. Maybe we played through the whole playlist or something. But I'll take a look at this off stream, since it's a lot of just waiting around and playing with sounds. But yeah, I want to say thanks to everyone for joining me this week. It's been almost 4 hours now, so we've made really good progress on this game. As a reminder, it's up on itch.io if you want to play it. Obviously we just added in this recipe book, but I'll push that up tonight and you could be able to play the latest game. We started this last week, which I started this stream off. Mr. Chat, hey, before you get off, can I get you to give me a quick elevator pitch for your API? I'm kind of curious. Yes, I can. Yeah, so basically at Chroma Golem, which is our game studio, we've been doing a lot of these demos with using the API in different ways. And so we've put up a few demos on itch. We've thought about putting them on Twitch, or not on Twitch, on Steam. But we've run into a few kind of big issues that didn't really have solutions. So like if we put this game up on itch and, for example, we want to change the API key that it's using. So like we're getting hit hard on it's going viral and we want to switch to a cheaper model or something. There's with like OpenAI, if you just use them directly and you're hard coding in all the models and data and stuff, you basically need to change that in your code and rebuild and redeploy to itch, and it'd be a much bigger ordeal to like redeploy to Steam. But one thing that we added for ourselves was we can just go in and we've got a little bit more control over how things are used in our own API without needing that whole redeploy process. So we started out with just being able to switch the model. We've also got a lot more stats and analytics on players. We're just kind of building out all the stuff that other models just using their APIs directly didn't really offer for our own games. So it's still very, very early. We just launched it last week, but we're building out these features for ourselves. We figured we might as well throw on some users and payments and let other people use them. It's pretty much at cost for like these OpenAI charges. They charge 3 cents a token. The input tokens, they charge slightly less, so we've got a little bit more wiggle room on. We're going to add in some stuff so you can provide details about your world as like a fact database, and whenever you generate some text, we're going to do all it's called RAG. I actually forget what it stands for, but basically there's a whole bunch of stuff for games that just the raw LLM stuff doesn't really do by its own or on its own. And so we're kind of building all that into a nicer package so we can, right now we just have one endpoint for generating alt text, but you can kind of see it a little bit. We're also working on an asset that makes it a little easier. But if we go to like my prompts directory, I can set up prompts that are reusable in different parts of the system or in the application. I can use tokens and stuff, but you can generate responses in Unity to get kind of an idea for what it will produce. Basically, the really short pitch is we were using OpenAI, but we didn't want to put games on itch or Steam while still using OpenAI directly. Another great example is like if somebody sniffs out your API key and you have a Steam game, you need to invalidate that API key so they can't use it, but that also makes it so all your players now can't play your game until they download a new version of it. So we're adding in a bunch of stuff to kind of handle all these pain points that exist for games specifically, and just kind of bundling that into a nice API for ourselves. Yeah, I hope that helps. Actually, if you sign up at api.chromagolem.com, we're giving everyone a bunch of GP, the currency, whatever it is, to spend on your tokens at the start. But if you let me know what your account is, I'll also give you a bonus like 4,000, bring you up to 50,000, I think, to start. I've gone crazy with my tokens because I am like simulating entire worlds and just kind of going crazy because we have a lot of credits that we need to spend. But yeah, go ahead and sign up and let me know. Ping me on, I guess, Discord or Twitch or something, and just let me know what your account is and I'll hook you up. But I think it's really nice. You can see like the last time people were playing each of your games, how many tokens those games have cost. You can switch to a different model real fast and it's instant. You can see like per user, they're kind of like where all your spend is going. Oh yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, it would actually it's nice hearing from you. I'm a fellow indie dev working on LLM stuff. I'm glad to get a hold of folks who are doing the same. Yeah, I definitely agree. I think there's a lot of people working very quietly in the space right now. It's hard to find them all. But one thing that we are going to add pretty soon, we're starting with NPC dialogue as a endpoint that is a lot nicer than, let me show the documentation real fast. Like right now, you basically build a full OpenAI style request with messages and details and stuff, but we are also building out endpoints for just like dialogue specifically, where you can set up an NPC and then you just send like a single message to them. They can pull details from the world. They can respond to your prompt in like their personality style. That's the first specialized endpoint we're going to add, but we're also going to add like item generation and potentially creature generation, which might be up your alley if you wanted like, I don't know how you're generating your creatures right now, but if you do like description into image, or probably wouldn't work with image, like describing an image, but you might be able to use the API for like generate me a description of a creature that has these features, and it would spit out just like a paragraph or however you want it formatted. I've been really tempted to build like a little Pokemon game with 2D sprites and creatures you can battle. I just haven't got around to it yet, but that's kind of the gist of what I was going for. But yeah, we only have this one endpoint right now, which you can do anything on. We're going to be adding more endpoints that do very specific things. So it's very early, and we would love everyone's feedback on the API. That'll help us a lot in determining what we want to add to it. So yeah, sign up for free tokens. Let me know. And Yeah, I hope that helps. I'm gonna go ahead and jump off the stream as well. I think, has it been 4 hours? Yeah. Sun's beating down on me. Thanks everyone for joining. Quick plug: I stream every Tuesday. I do game development. I also stream games sometimes. I love playing. There's a new Overwatch season tonight, so I'll probably be streaming tonight some Overwatch as well. But we have the Discord for our studio linked in the description of the stream. Feel free to join it. We post about our streams in there most of the time. And that's where you're going to find all our demos and links to the cool stuff we're working on and all the other people working in AI as well. So if you want to network and talk to them, it's a great spot for it. And if you have friends working in AI, invite them too. But yeah, thanks everyone for joining me. I'll get this posted up on Itch tonight, and it's been real fun. Thanks for joining, and see you guys next week. Bye.